Hello! Welcome if you're new, and welcome back to returning viewers. I'm Julia, and this is NB Library. One of my absolute favorite things just in life is a Dungeons & Dragons actual play show called Dimension 20. It is on the streaming service Dropout, which used to be College Humor, and most of the seasons are run by Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is currently DMing for Critical Role. I've been watching this show on and off in the last 5 years, almost 6 years now, and it has just been a constant delight and light in my life. It brings me joy that I haven't felt for a piece of media since I was young, and things felt so beautiful and exciting and special to me. Of course, there have been things that I've watched and read that have brought me joy in the last few years, but very few things reach the heights of Dimension 20. When I started watching, they were airing their 5th season, and now they're airing their 26th, so a lot has changed. I actually made a video like this back in 2020, but of course at the time there were only 6 seasons to talk about, so some of my favorite seasons have aired in the interim. After my favorite seasons end, I just want to keep that feeling alive and seek out books and other media that have the same themes and keep those vibes going for me. So I am always on the lookout for books that remind me of particular Dimension 20 seasons. The first book I'm going to read is one that came out today, actually, as of the day that I'm recording this, and I was already going to make some kind of video about it, and then I realized that it actually fits perfectly for a Dimension 20 season. So that is The Isle in the Silver Sea by Tasha Suri. It is sapphic, and it is continuing the trend of 2025 being the year of Lady Knights. In fact, it is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. The Isle in the Silver Sea is about 2 women, a witch and a knight, serving in the Queen's court, and they are in this sort of infinite doomed love story, forced to play out the same story over and over again. And in this book, they are trying to break that cycle. And the season of Dimension 20 that I'm going to be reading this for is Never After. Never After is the fairy tale horror season, and it is about all of these fairy tale characters who live in the same world, living out these fairy tales, it turns out, over and over again, and trying to break the cycle. Some of the main characters include Pinocchio and Little Red Riding Hood, and they've all banded together to stop this looming threat and to try and have their stories go a different way this time. Something that I really loved about Never After is something that we don't see in a lot of Dimension 20 seasons, because a lot of Dimension 20 is subverting the normal genre of D&D. D&D is typically high fantasy, it's usually set in their house setting, the Forgotten Realms, and the first many seasons are subverting that. They're saying, well, what if, D&D was in a 80s John Hughes high school film, or what if you combined Game of Thrones and Candyland? And it's always combining these two ideas, and while Never After is horror and fairy tale, it is also maybe one of the most classical, like, going on a quest type stories. And as much as I love subversion of tropes, I also love tropes played straight, and I love a journey and quest story, so Never After really scratched that itch for me. There are also some absolutely incredible characters. I love the main cast, known as the Intrepid Heroes, and one of the main cast, Allie Beardsley, is really playing against type in Never After. Also, their character is a trans man, Timothy Hubbard, aka Mother Hubbard, and I love him. There are a lot of NPCs in the season that I love, and it just wraps up in such a satisfying way, and all of the elements really served the themes and aesthetic of the season. I'll be listening to The Isle on the Silver Sea on audio. I got it from Libro FM. Oddly enough, the narrator is actually not listed for this audio, so I had to play it to find out who the narrator was, and I was really delighted to find that it was Shiromi Orserio. She reads the Dauntless Path trilogy by Intisar Kanan. I listened to that entire trilogy last year and really loved it, so I'm excited to hear her narrate this. I'm gonna get started on this audio, and I will let you know my thoughts when I am further along. slept all the way through for the first time all week last night. So that means I got up with my alarm and I've got my tea, had my hard-boiled egg, and I was just too tired last night to update about The Isle on the Silver Sea, but I am about a quarter of the way through. I've noticed this thing with book blurbs lately where they'll have a lot of adjectives and they'll be like, their sweeping love will redefine the blah blah blah, but it doesn't say what the plot is. But I actually kind of like that because you go in just not knowing what to expect. In most books, the blurb will take you up to like the 10-25% mark, and then after that you're on your own and you don't know what's going to happen. But in this book, I just haven't known what's going to happen the entire time, and I kind of like that. It's like I went in without reading the blurb. I do need to take this tea bag out at some point. This is set in an England that is fueled by fairy tales, and I wasn't quite sure what the mechanics of that were going to be, but how it works is that the people who are involved in a fairy tale, whose lives are shaped by one of these kind of primordial stories, they're called incarnates. There might be a pun that I'm missing. I imagine that it's spelled incarnates in the physical version, but I am listening to it on audio. And when they are children, there's some point where they have, I think, a vision of their previous self, the last people who were living out this story, and then they realize that they are incarnates, and from there on they are kind of considered special. Like, they say that an incarnate child is a gift, and they start to feel the tug of their story, and they kind of know how it's going to play out. Whether or not it has anything to do with their current personality, the story that they're in dictates how they're going to act. One of our main characters, Sir Lavinia, she's the knight, she is the bastard daughter of a lord, and although they say having an incarnate child is a gift, in her particular case, she's going to be fated to kill her love and then kill herself, and so her parents kind of mourn the fact that she is an incarnate, and that they're going to lose her. Our other character, Simran, which was the name of one of my best friends in college, so that keeps tripping me up, she's a witch, and she is actually an immigrant. She's from India, but she doesn't remember what it was like growing up in India. As soon as you get to England, your memories of where you came from fade, so you assume that you're from somewhere else. They're called being from elsewhere, but you don't actually know what that's like. The land erases your memory of not being in England. And of course, there's a lot that it's saying about British colonialism and the erasing of other lands' stories and traditions once you get on England's shores. Although kind of a lot of time periods are happening simultaneously. It seems to be a mishmash of Elizabethan and Victorian eras. And if it's the Victorian era, that's the colonial period, but it actually doesn't sound like they have any colonies yet. What about America? I just thought about that. But anyway, we don't know if this is a world where England has conquered and colonized India. And I actually wonder how an incarnate would react if they left to go to another country or a colony. At this point in the story, Simran and Lavinia have met. Lavinia also just goes by Vina. But it took them quite a while to meet, and I liked that because it established both of them as their own characters and more of a slow burn. And their story has not truly begun. They haven't fulfilled their roles as the knight and the witch yet. But Vina went looking for Simran because they are both in danger. Someone is trying to stop the tales from happening. Now, you'd think that would be a good thing, but if someone dies before their tale can fully play out, their part of the world disappears and nobody remembers that it was ever there. Early on, a tale gets destroyed and like an entire part of the south coast is just gone. Vina, of course, has no ill will towards Simran. She doesn't even know her yet, and as a knight, she's trying to be polite and chivalrous to this woman, but Simran is like, I don't want anything to do with you, you are going to kill me. But right now, there's no reason for them to do that. Aside from this predestined animosity, they don't actually have any animosity towards each other. They don't know each other. They don't have any kind of historical enmity. And in the story, the knight comes to kill the witch because she was terrorizing people, but Simran has no plans to do that so far. So I'll be curious to see if their paths will lead them towards this inevitable conclusion as themselves, or if they will start to act out of character to fit the character of the knight and the witch in the story. This book isn't at all what I expected going in. When I first saw the cover and the title, I thought it was going to be some kind of variation on the Lady of Shalott story, but then we got the plot summary, and now that I'm reading it, it is much more a commentary on stories and how traditional stories can hurt us, and how two brown girls in England can be at such a disadvantage even if one of them comes from a privileged background. And the question of, is this the first time that two people from elsewhere have been incarnates, and why and how does that work? It's been very different from Tasha Suri's other work that I've read so far. I've read the Chronicles of Amba duology, and I read the Jasmine Throne, I think that's the first book of the trilogy, but with the Sapphic trilogy, I thought that there were too many POV characters that weren't the main characters, and so I felt like the main characters just got lost in the story and I didn't really get to know them at all. But luckily this story is just focusing on the two main characters, so that complaint that I had about that book isn't here, so I can just fully enjoy their story. Oh, I forgot to mention, Simran has a best friend who's from the village that they both grew up in, who is a trans man, and the two of them are very close, so it's sweet to see a important trans minor character. An important minor character that's trans. There we go. So last night I didn't have the energy to update you and get my thoughts together. I barely have it now because I'm hardly awake, but just a few minutes before I was getting ready for bed, I wanted to rearrange my bookshelves. Why this came upon me, I don't know. But I've updated my book cart, so now my immediate upcoming TBR is on the top for the most part. It's like these, and then these ones didn't fit. And then my TBR shelf that I'll show you in a minute is now the TBR cart. Here's the rest of them. It actually looks like a lot fewer when they're not all on a shelf, so yeah, my physical TBR isn't that bad. And then I remembered that I bought books yesterday, so those have to fit on here somehow. This is where the books were, and then my nonfiction books start. And I kind of have this thing where the fiction books that I own are alphabetized, but they're broken up across several bookshelves in a weird way. So I want to try and fix that and have there be less of a break. The fiction books start here, alphabetized, and now you can see how I need more space. And they continue here, and then the Pratchett's stop, and there's my dice box, and then it's comics, and then cookbooks. And so I want there to be more of a flow of the fiction. There is nothing on top of anything else. It does still stop there. And then I have comics and cookbooks, but I like having the cookbooks here next to my reading nook because this is where I come to consult them. And Discworld continues. I have fiction. Got a nice demarcated line, so that's going to be room for extra books, and then all the read nonfiction, and then poetry. Wanted to give a really quick update. I had a great day today. My mom and I went out to the peninsula and I got to go to an independent bookstore where I had a stamp card. So I had to buy a book to fill out the stamp card, and I ended up buying Ocean's Gadori by Elaine Cho. We also went to a McMiniman's and found the Speakeasy and got some drinks. I have been listening to the audiobook of The Door on the Silver Sea, and it feels like it's coming up to the climax, but then I checked where I'm at, and I'm only 62%, and I just can't imagine what's going to happen next. I really have not known what's going to happen, and I think I will have a compilation of spoilers of my live reaction, because it's, I think, very important that you not be spoiled about this, but I'll just do this real quick. Okay, big spoiler for The Isle on the Silver Sea, but I've been wondering, where's the King Arthur mythos in all of this? The queen has been the queen since ages long past, and I'm like, yeah, but where does King Arthur fit into this? And they just went into this crypt where there is a statue of a guy in a boat with a woman, King Arthur, and a broken stone table. Hello? So the plot of The Isle on the Silver Sea thickens. We've had another King Arthur reference, where they've been to the library and they drank from the chalice, which might be the Holy Grail, I don't know. It also might be the cauldron from Sir Percival's story. They're realizing, or rather Vina is realizing, that the statue under the castle, so the statue of King Arthur, and their tale, and this pale man, who they found out is the original witch's son, or rather a child that she was raising, are all connected. So now I'm trying to piece together, is the knight King Arthur? Is the witch Morgana? Is the child Morgaine? Is he Merlin? We don't know, but they're all related somehow. I'm trying to think if there is a knight and witch story in the Arthurian mythos, but nothing in particular is coming to mind. Like, the only witch is Morgana and Nimue. I think I need more information still. So from the vision that Vina saw from the chalice, she knows the name of the Pale Assassin. For some reason, she hasn't told Simran that yet. Like, she followed her to the tour because Simran tried to leave, and Vina followed her, and now they're making out, and Vina hasn't told her yet. And I feel like the only reason that is not for a good reason within the plot. I feel like it's going to be a reveal because it's going to be a name that we outside the story know. It's going to be like Merlin or Morgaine or something like that. No, not Morgaine. Who's Arthur's son? Mordred. I keep saying Morgaine, I mean Mordred. My money is on Merlin or Mordred. I don't know who else it would be. Like, someone powerful enough to have been immortal. I feel like Merlin makes sense. He's a druid, but anyway. Yeah, I feel like it would have been prudent for Vina to have told her right after they came out of the chalice. She needs that information. I don't know why Vina hasn't told her yet, but I feel like it's going to be a big reveal later. So they haven't said specifically, but there is a like lost prince or like eternal prince or something like that who is on this smaller island bound in chains, and that's obviously Arthur. They just haven't said his name yet. Also, I remembered that Elaine, which is the name of the fourth witch from the Tale of the Knight and the Witch, is the name of many important women in the Arthur mythos, but importantly, that is the name of the Lady of Shalott. So my thought that the Lady of Shalott was going to be important in this book was right, which, like, there was no indication of that in the marketing material whatsoever. I just clocked that somehow, so yay me. They're trying to wake Arthur up so that they can stop being incarnates, basically. But right now, like, Vina is trapped in her tail, and Simran is trying to go to the island to free Arthur. So much more is going to happen in this book, and I just don't know what's coming. Is the Eternal Queen Guinevere? Or I've also thought, like, there's several important queens in British history that are redheaded. She might be Boudica. Something really interesting about this book that I've noticed in all of Tasha Suri's writing is I definitely enjoy it while I'm reading it or actually listening to it. I think I've listened to all the books of hers that I've read, except for The Jasmine Throne. But anyway, all the books of hers that I've read, I just am never super excited to pick them back up again. But then when I do, I enjoy them. I'm just, like, not fully gripped by those stories. But I think something that is being done really, really well here is that sometimes the dual POV just feels kind of silly and arbitrary. But here it cuts between Vina and Simran's POV exactly at the point when they split up or you want to get the other person's perspective. And I just think that's been done really, really well, where the instant you want to know what the other person is thinking or, like, what they went off and did, we go to them and we see what happened. So I think that the book is doing a really good job of, like, keeping them apart enough that the dual POV makes sense, but also having great passages of them being in person together. Last night I finished The Door on the Sea by Tasha Suri, although I might need to re-listen to the last 10 minutes of it because I was definitely falling asleep while I was finishing it. But when I started the day, I had 3.5 hours left on the audiobook, and I just wanted to finish it, and so I was listening to it while I was walking and doing the dishes and while I was getting ready for bed, and so right up until the point that I fell asleep, I was trying to finish it. If you can hear the dog, I'm sorry. My roommate and her dog are back home. I was rewatching some of the predictions that I was making, and most of them were wrong, but I was thinking and I was extracting the information and interpolating it. I was kind of on the right track. Ultimately, I was surprised by the outcome, and I think that's good. To talk about this book without spoilers, I think that the way that it wrapped up ended up being really epic in scope. It was an even better read-alike for Never After than I could have predicted. Spoilers for both Never After and The Isle on the Silver Sea. 3, 2, 1. The last third of the book, the main characters sort of get episode 3'd. And so that was a big surprise for me, but I really liked the way that the book took it. Okay, spoilers are over now. There were points where I felt like the story was taking its time to getting to the conclusion, and I think I was rushing a little bit of just wanting to finish the book. But by the end of it, I felt like everything that had come up was important, and everything that I questioned why it was in the story was relevant by the end. And this just, as I said, ended up having such a broader scope than I thought it was going to from the beginning. And I think it's really important to go into this book without knowing very much. And I enjoyed that experience, at least. So I think that you're going to get a lot out of it by not being spoiled for it. I think that the relationship between the two characters, Vina and Simran developed really nicely over the course of the book. Importance was also placed on familial relationships and found family. There ended up being a really beautiful found family in this book. The themes of sticking to tradition and trying so hard to prevent change ultimately stifles and kills culture. We need a diversity of people and a diversity of stories if we're going to have any kind of future. So as I said, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.25 stars, and I think that it is an excellent read-alike for Dimension 20 Never After. The next season of Dimension 20 that I'm going to be reading a read-alike for is the one that just finished airing, and that is Cloudward Ho. Cloudward Ho is a grand steampunk adventure, a story about getting the band back together for one last great mission. It has so many elements of wonder and exploration. It's been one of my favorite seasons so far. I actually haven't seen the last 2 episodes because I've been waiting for my roommate to get home so we can finish watching it together. So I'm excited to see how everything wraps up. The book that I'm going to be reading as the read-alike is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I've been hearing about this book for a really long time. Feels like even before it came out, there was buzz for it. And I avoided it for the longest time because I hated The Kingdom of Brass. Is that what it's called? The first book in the Daevabad trilogy. I hated it. I got it as a Book of the Month book, and I remember it was New Year's Eve in 2017. I was still in college, and I was going to my sister's friend's New Year's Eve party, and I had nothing to do, and this is the book that I brought, and I was just gritting my teeth and trying to push through this book to finish it before the end of the year, and I just didn't like the characters, I didn't like the plot, I wished that I was reading something else. So that put me off the author for a really long time, but when I was looking for read-alikes, this book came up a few times, and I had even seen someone read it in a reading vlog and thought that it sounded really interesting. Like Cloudward Ho, the main character is a former captain. In this case, she is former pirate captain in the ancient Muslim world. In Cloudward Ho, Comfrey MacLeod is this very important NPC who is a mysterious figure for much of the plot and is a very heroic and legendary but complicated woman, and she is a skyship captain. So Amina, I've actually already started reading this book. Also, I'm 11% of the way into the audiobook. Amina has this past that she's tried to put behind her, but she is a very powerful, tall woman. Love a tall woman. I'm crazy for them. Who has a lot of regrets about her past, but also misses that swashbuckling, rip-roaring life, and is called back into it for one last adventure. Already in Amina al-Sirafi, I am just buoyed along by the plot. I love the stories of kind of Amina's exploits and comparing that to who she is now. She has a daughter that she loves. I love that this is a book about an older mother character. Comfrey is also older and a mother, actually a grandmother. I know there are going to be some fantastical elements, and Amina's going to pick up a ragtag crew along the way, just like Comfrey's former crew gets back together and adds some new additions in Cloudward Ho. I'm sure I'll have more to say along the way since this is a long book, but I will keep listening and get back to you when I'm further along. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the audiobook for The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, and this is a 5-star candidate. I'm enjoying this so much, and I'm just a little annoyed because I'd put off reading it for so long, and I was like, no, I don't like that author, and then I'm like, oh, this might be one of my favorite books of the year. I can usually tell if a book is going to be a new favorite by a few chapters in. It's the language, it's the characters, I just feel so buoyed up and sparkling from the inside. And I definitely feel that with this book. It has so many elements that just make me so happy to read it. It's got a great ensemble cast of characters that genuinely care about each other, adventures that are traveling all over the map, just lush world-building details of the sense and the tactile sensations of the ropes and the parchment and these ruins, the food and the sea air. There's a moment when they're out at sea and Amina is sitting on the captain's bench. It's a beautiful day and she's just steering the ship, and I'm like, God, I want to be there. I can picture it so wonderfully in my mind, and it makes me smile. Like, while I'm listening to it and I'm out walking, I just want to like literally click my heels. Everywhere they go, there are new complications, reveals, or surprises. They learn a little bit about the mystery, like an aspect that I love of Cloudward Ho. They're just putting all these pieces together. When they get to Socotra, this one island, they're looking for some particular people. The setup is fantastic. They have to arrive on the other side of the island and travel across it. They find all these abandoned villages. A very important character gets introduced. We get some of his background. They have to squeeze through the cave. There's a threat of this giant snake. They have this build up to meeting this villain who up until that point they hadn't met, but just by everything that he's done and that people said about him, you're already terrified. You haven't even met him yet. And then objectives change. They have people they need to rescue. It would make a fantastic RPG scenario. There are so many different threats and things that they need to do going on. I also love that in the audiobook, I assume that it's kind of asides that the character is making in the text, but in the audiobook, she is telling her story to a scribe, and when she's making these asides, you can literally hear like she grabs the mic and then turns away so her voice is muffled because she's speaking to someone like off camera, and there's like shuffling of paper. I just love that detail. The only like kind of small nitpicky thing that I have that might change as the book goes on is we're told that Amina is really badass. There are all these stories about her. She has this reputation. People that she meets really admire her. But I feel like I haven't seen as much of her being a badass. I think that she is great. She has a lot of agency. She's a flawed character. But there haven't been as many like big moments of her being really like clever or intimidating as I would expect. I need a little bit more showing, not telling, about how much of a badass she is. But again, 2/3 of the way through, it's going swimmingly, and I think that this is going to be a very highly rated book for me. I'm dressed as Bilbo Baggins. It's Halloween. Last day of the month, I just finished The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi on my way home from work, and it's a 5-star. I'm so happy. My 8th 5-star of the year. I loved it. I was so happy to be reading it. The neighbor kid is getting ready for trick-or-treating next door. There are so many parts I want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil anything in this vlog. But there's a part like 2/3 of the way through where there's like a bird court, and when I was listening to that, I was like, yeah, this is a 5-star. And there's a particular character, and I won't tell you who, but he's just a rascal, and then every time he has to suffer the consequences of his actions, he's like, hey, I'm just a little guy, it's my birthday, I'm just a little guy. That was great. The complaint that I had about wanting Amina to be a little bit more clever and badass, I think still stands to the tiniest of extents, but when she was separated from other characters, she was really able to come into her own and show herself as being a legend. I love the reveal at the end of who the other narrator is. That made me cry. All around, it was such a great time. I'm so glad that I read it. I'm looking forward to the sequel, which is coming out next spring. I just want to spend more time with these characters and in this setting. I like genuinely can picture myself going there, and I just want to visit that time and place so much. And with other 5-star books that I've enjoyed and books that I love and return to, it had all of these great scenes and moments that I keep returning to in my mind, and when I think back on the book, I'm like, yeah, it went in this sequential order, and then this scene happened. Like, it's all so crystal clear in my mind, and all of the scenes were so well placed, and all the scenes were necessary, they were interesting, they contributed to the story, and it was so well paced so that I can look back on it and see all of the rising action, the introduction of the characters, the, you know, moment of despair before the final climax. Just one of those just well plotted, good, fun adventure books. I think, like reviews of good books tend to be, this portion of the review is going to be pretty short. I feel like I've already talked a lot about what I like about this book, and because I don't want to spoil you, and I think that you should read it if it sounds good and if you like pirates, I won't say much more than that. Just know that I loved it and it was one of my favorite books of the year. On to the last book that I'm reading for this vlog. One of my favorite seasons of Dimension 20, I think it's tied for first with Fantasy High sophomore year. That is Starstruck Odyssey. I think tonight actually is the Viva Las Vegas show. Wish I could be there. Can't wait to watch the video on demand version of it. Starstruck Odyssey is a setting based on a comic book series that Brennan's mom wrote, Elaine Lee, which is a like madcap gonzo space opera it's set in Anarch era, and so there's no rules, there's not a lot of internal logic, wacky things just happen, and it has just some of my favorite scenes and characters of any season of Dimension 20. There's a sequence of events that happens when they get to a zoo, and then all the way through to a certain art show, shall we say, that is like my favorite just collection of moments in Dimension 20 history. And I gave a little bit of a hint earlier when describing the show to say the title of the book that I'm going to be reading as read-alike, which is Space Opera by Catherynne and Valente. I'm having a little bit of a year of Catherynne Valente. I've read Radiance and Speakeasy by her the last few months and knew that I wanted to read more. The setup of space opera is a little bit different from Starstruck, where Starstruck is set in the far future, we've colonized other planets, there's aliens, and space opera is sort of a first contact story where aliens come to Earth and they say, hey, we've got this whole federation of aliens, we participate in this song contest every year where every planet sends a band. You all have to submit a band, and if you come in last, we'll kill everyone on the planet. It's described as like sci-fi Eurovision for that reason. And the aliens want a specific band. They want Decibel Jones and I wanted to say Magnetic Zeros, but that's already a band. It's Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. It's Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros or something like that. It's like a washed up glam punk band. So based on David Bowie with a little bit of a different story. So Decibel is thrust into this international, or rather interplanar competition, and he's just not sure that he should be here, but he has to do well, or at least not come in last, or else the entire planet will be destroyed. I chose this as the read-alike for Starstruck because I think that the tone and the like madcap gonzo of it all will be very similar to Starstruck. It's hard to find like fun space operas or like really bright Technicolor space operas. Feels like a lot of them are that gunmetal gray that I've complained about before. But this one's being written by Catherynne Valente, who has a masterful grasp on language and colorful descriptions. So I'm going to start the audio of this tonight, and I will update you when, again, I'm further along. Got some de-alcoholized wine that my mom got me. It's been a few days since I started reading Space Opera by Catherynne Valente, and it's also been a few days since I DNF'd it. I got 25% of the way into the audiobook, and it was one of those instances where I kept dreading returning to it, and I was thinking about all the other things that I wanted to be reading. A lot of the criticisms of this book in online reviews talk about how it takes forever to say anything, all the sentences are super long, there's a million different ways that one thing is described. You know, why use one metaphor when you could use 5? It doesn't have a very good average rating on the Storygraph. I think it's 3.53 And I knew all that going in, and I thought, I've liked Valente's other work, I know what to expect. Maybe this won't be a problem for me going in, but all the issues that people had were the same issues that I was having, where we'd just gotten to 25%, and it felt like the plot was just kicking off, and there were a lot of flashbacks. I don't necessarily think that having a lot of flashbacks are bad, but I felt like they weren't really moving the plot forward. They were deepening our understanding of the characters, but I think that the criticism that I hesitate to call it overwritten, because it is very definitely a style choice, and I don't think that it's necessarily a bad style choice. I'm still really impressed with Valente's writing style and writing voice. It just wasn't working for me. It was trying to be Douglas Adams, but like cranked up to 13. And I just felt a little bit exhausted while I was listening to it, to be perfectly honest. I was also, and this is entirely a personal thing, I was really annoyed by this setup of you have to join in this space competition with people's tastes that are entirely different from what the average humans are, and if you lose, the whole planet gets destroyed. And I'm sure that the book is going to explore that idea, but I was just so incensed by that concept that it was difficult for me to like keep reading it. And I can sometimes handle like injustice on the page, especially if it's written by an own voices author and is really speaking about or being a metaphor for real life injustice. But sometimes when things are just plain unfair, it makes me very frustrated. I sometimes can't handle it. And again, that's just a personal thing. I don't think that like portraying a bad thing in a book is bad. There has to be conflict to move the story forward. But I would just feel myself getting frustrated, and on top of that, the sentences were all very long, and all of them had a lot to say and a lot to describe. And when I thought about DNFing, I was filled with relief, and so I always take that as a sign that it's time to stop reading the book. I thought about other books that I could read that were a read-alike for Starstruck Odyssey. I thought, like, could I read the comics? Could I read the original Starstruck stage play? But I'm feeling so excited by other books right now, other books that I purchased, books that I checked out from the library, and I've been filming this vlog for quite a while now, and just the reviewing and the filming B-roll, I'm still new to this, and I'm also filming a few other videos right now, so I think I'm just gonna call this one done. Kind of a bummer note to end it on, but I did read some really great books for this vlog, had one of my favorite books of the year, so it wasn't all bad. I'm still always on the lookout for books that remind me of Dimension 20 seasons. If you know of any, please feel free to list them down below. I do love Brennan and all of the cast and crew, the Intrepid Heroes, and all the people that have made Dimension 20 possible. It's been such a big part of my life, such a big source of happiness in my life, and something that has brought me closer with other people. I remember when Fantasy High Junior Year aired, our next door neighbors had us over for a watch party, which was so amazing to be cheering on actions in D&D combat like you're watching sports with other people. I really can't describe how cool that is. That is all for me today. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.